Thanks everyone for joining. This is Tom Schumacher from USAID, Global Development Lab, and I'm introducing our third webinar in the series. This one is Scaling Impact Through Replication. Just a quick note on these. We hope to continue to kind of do these kinds of peer learning exchanges. And so I think in this sign up there was a space to suggest other topics and such, so we definitely take those into account, and I think this one is a result of several organizations and folks having an active interest in this topic. So continue to give us those wherever you can. This webinar is going to be moderated by Olivier Kayser from HYSTRA. He's the founder and managing director. And for those of you that don't know, it's a global consulting firm that works with business and social sector pioneers to design and implement hybrid strategies to tackle social problems. And the two speakers today are Simon Bransfield-Garth and Jordan Kassalow. Simon's from Azuri, which is an energy access company operating in several countries now in sub-Saharan Africa. And Jordan is a founder of VisionSpring, the Eye Alliance, both focusing on issues of access to vision care. So from there, I'll pass it on to Olivier. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Tom, for this introduction. It's a very exciting moment for me to have the opportunity to moderate this conversation and have with Jordan and Simon two entrepreneurs who have a real experience in scaling up business models across multiple countries. There's a big difference between talking about it and having done it. So learning from your experience would be great. We have agreed to structure our conversation in kind of 4 steps. The first question we'll address is when it is the right time to start expanding internationally. The second topic will be what does it take to successfully scale up or expand internationally? And the third topic will be beyond the organizational growth of the company. Are there ways to go beyond this growth to achieve even bigger impact? And finally, we'll take questions from the audience. You have very kindly put forward a number of questions, which we will try to address during this session. But if there are any other points you wanted to raise, this would be extremely good. Please understand that it will be difficult as part of this conversation to address very specific company-specific issues you may have. But if you send us some direct emails to any of the 3 of us, I'm sure we'll do our best to try to address those. So with this kind of plan, the first question is, when is it time to start to scale up and expand internationally? Jordan, would we want to start sharing experience with VisionSpring?
Sure. Olivier, thank you. Tom, thank you for the opportunity to share some of our experiences that we've had over the last 15 years building VisionSpring from an idea to an organization that is in the process of scaling. Maybe just spend a minute to tell people a little bit about what VisionSpring does, because I'll be speaking about different types of eyeglasses and different types of customers, and so having a little context there might be helpful. In the world today, there are over 624 million people who are visually impaired or blind, not because of an eye disease, but because they just need a strong pair of eyeglasses and don't have them. That falls into 2 categories, prescription eyeglasses and ready-made reading glasses. The majority of that 624 million are represented by people who just don't have access to a simple pair of ready-made reading glasses that most of the listeners can find in their countries, even off the shelf. Certainly in the United States, Europe, ready-made reading glasses are available as a consumer goods product that are available in pharmacies and gas stations and supermarkets and so forth. The second category are prescription glasses, which tend to need the expertise of an optometrist or an ophthalmologist to prescribe, And those glasses are needed by both adults so they can see to drive safely, see to work, as well as children so they can see to learn and see the blackboard, for instance. So that's a little bit of context of the products that we sell. We sell both prescription glasses to adults and children, as well as ready-made reading glasses for people over the age of 35 or 40 who lose their ability to see up close. So that's just a little bit of ways of context. Now, in terms of the question Olivier asked about scaling, one comment that I'd like to make at the beginning is that what's best for a business model is not always what is practiced by the social entrepreneurial donor community. There are often metrics, like if you are meeting with donors, one of the first questions they'll ask you is, how many countries are you in? Which is absolutely the wrong question to ask, because that should not be the question, because that in many ways is a distraction for a growing young social enterprise, or any business for that matter. The right question should be how is your value proposition appreciated by the market? And are your products and services getting the kind of uptake that they're supposed to be getting or needing to get in order to start to see that there's a demand for your products and services? Until you can answer that question clearly, that yes, our product and services are being appreciated and valued and paid for at a reasonable cost by the people who we're trying to serve, then you have really no right to start to scale. But often we are all pressured to scale before our essential business models are tested and proven, because the donor community wants and defines scale as how many countries are you in. And again, the last thing you want to do is be distracted by opening up a new front in your war on getting your products and services out there. And so that would be my first comment, and I'll turn it over to Simon to get his responses as well. But that's where I'd like to start, is get your business model right, get your value proposition to your consumer right, and only then should you have the license to start thinking about scaling.
You are talking, Jordan, about having proof that there is a customer willingness to buy your product. Would you put the bar as high as saying you should demonstrate that you could be profitable before moving to another country? Or how high should the bar be?
You faded out a little bit in terms of should
wait before expanding, wait to have demonstrated you could be profitable in the first country?
I don't think it's not quite necessary to show that you can be profitable, but I think that you should be able to show that at least if you're selling a product, and I know some of the people are selling services instead of products, or both, but certainly if you're selling a product, that you don't want to start to scale until you can demonstrate that the consumers are willing to pay at least the fully loaded cost of goods for that product. As many startup companies for-profit companies will show you, is that it can be a very long pathway to scale. You know, Jeff Bezos blew through $2 billion before he was profitable. So I don't think you need to show profitability, but you certainly have to show a pathway toward profitability and the ability to cover at least the cost of goods as an early indication that people are willing to pay for your products and services.
Right. Simon, would you care, as Jordan has done, to explain a bit Azuri Technologies and then try to answer the same question, please?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to. And thank you very much for the opportunity to join this meeting. So I'm Simon Bransfield-Garth. I'm CEO of a company called Azuri Technologies. We are delivering small-scale solar power in sub-Saharan Africa. So around the planet, about 20% of the population don't have access to grid electricity, and about half of those people, about 600 million, live in sub-Saharan Africa. Broadly, the problem is being fixed, albeit slowly, in Asia and India, where the other half live. But in Africa, the population rate is sufficiently large that actually the number of people off grid is still going up. So Azuri is providing small-scale solar home systems, the sort of thing that will have a panel about the size of a laptop, sits on your roof, and it provides lighting, 4 lights for 8 hours every night, rechargeable radio, maybe a solar-powered TV, that sort of an offering. And one of the sort of standard problems with all renewables is that when you or I buy electricity, we pay for what we use. Whereas if you want to do renewables, you actually have to buy your own power station. And so that means you've got to have capital. And so what we did was to combine mobile phone and solar technology, so that instead of people having to buy their solar power up front, they could buy it as they use it. So people typically pay something like 50 cents a day, and they get access to solar power to light up their houses. And for about $1 a day, then you get a 24-inch television with 54 channels of satellite TV. So we started 6 years ago, and we were commercial from the outset. So and Paul Polak says, you can't donate your way out of poverty. And we absolutely subscribe to that view of the world. You've got to build sustainable commercial business models. And ideally, you want to build those in country. So you want to build sales, marketing, support, and ultimately manufacturing and development actually in the countries in which you're working, not just parachuting in product from the outside world. We've always worked with partners in country in order to do our distribution. Today, we've got about 110,000 customers across sub-Saharan Africa. And one way or another, we've worked in 12 countries in Africa. And I think there's a few learnings that we've had. Being a venture-backed company, of course, you know, your investors want you to grow as fast as you possibly can. But it is important to do that with care. And there is nothing worse than building a broken business model, particularly in the case of distribution in Africa. If you build broken distribution, very often it's cheaper to just forget it, walk away and start again than it is to try and fix it. So you need to make sure that you've got the processes to be comfortable that the business model that you're building is right from the outset. And I would absolutely concur that although as a business you don't need to be profitable, at a customer level you absolutely have to be profitable. So you've got to be making realistic commercial margins on the offering in order to have a sustainable business, in order to be able to get something to move forward. And some people will say, well, you're making commercial margins, wouldn't it be better to provide it less expensively to the consumer? And the answer is, well, for the first few weeks it would be good to do that, but you won't have a sustainable business and the customer won't get supported in the long term. So actually in the long term, it's much better for the customer to be paying sustainable levels of return to the suppliers. So when do you scale up? Well, that's the million-dollar question. And actually there's no simple answer to that. You tend to have bursts of scaling, then you have bursts of consolidation, and you have bursts of scaling again. And one of the things that we found has been really important is you've got to have data. You've got to go out and you've got to find that data, and you mustn't drink your own Kool-Aid. So just because you're making a product that looks like the best thing out there, and you think it's fabulous, doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't something that you've overlooked. And so we have had universities, we've had other independent organizations to go out and talk to our customers and find out if we really are doing a good job or not. You know, are the customers really happy? Are they really better off than they were beforehand? All these claims that we make from a marketing point of view, you need to get independent people to go and validate that. And similarly with your economics at the customer level, are you really making money? When you take into account the average cost of deploying that product to the customer, are you really making money in going and doing that? So there are a few of the things that we've looked at as we've grown. And broadly, we've grown roughly 80% per year for the last 5 years, something like that. So, more or less doubling every year. And I guess our view is achievable. The sort of growth you get in business of sort of 10x a year or whatever, that's much, much more difficult to do in these sorts of markets. And you do risk overextending yourself and then finding it difficult to recover as a result.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Simon, for these explanations. In the same way as Jordan's mentioned, the pressure there is from donors or investors to grow maybe too fast or expand internationally too quickly. I think that in the pay-as-you-go industry in particular, the KPI that these donors use, which is the number of households connected, irrespective of whether this household could eventually repay the loans they had taken, was probably given the wrong kind of incentives. And it took a lot of backbone from the entrepreneurs to resist this pressure from investors and donors. How have you found donors and investors being willing to listen to the voice of the entrepreneur? And how strong can you push back people you depend on from your financing?
Yeah, it's a challenge for sure. So I think in the early, absolutely right. The metric was how many customers do you have? And, there was a sense that, well, you went and got lots of customers, and even if they weren't profitable, it didn't matter because that would get you your next funding round and you go figure it out later on. Mm-hmm. I think that investors, the sums of investment are now becoming significant, tens and hundreds of millions of dollars. So, real investors are looking at that and saying, well, actually, is this financially sustainable? And that's a good thing for the, this is not a dot-com industry. There's not going to be a single winner that totally dominates. And it is important that you can demonstrate that you're a viable commercial business. So I think in probably the last 12 months, that sentiment has shifted, also in the investment community. Yeah. So that's now investors good. Are much more closely at.
Yeah. Thank you, Simon. Now, moving to the second question, which is, okay, now we know it's time for us to scale up. Our model has proven its viability well enough so that we can start expanding and scaling up. What does it take to scale up? And in particular, if I look at the questions our friends from the audience have raised, there is a question of what's the role of communications in accelerating demand development? How much should we take into account the local context? Or can we just apply what we have learned from the same country? What about acquiring the talent, the local talent in human resources we need? And also, how much can we leverage the business side, or maybe again donors to help us expand internationally? Jordan, based on your experience, how would you answer these questions?
Those are all critical questions. Each one is essential in order to scale an enterprise. The way that we look at it at VisionSpring is that we look at the spine of our organization, if you will, the bones of the spine of the organization are human resources. Mm-hmm. We need people first, and that's where we put a lot of our emphasis, is getting the best people for the particular jobs that need to be filled. And in that spinal, those bones of the spine run a spinal column, which we think of as the nerves of the organization, which is our information technology. As Simon was mentioning, data is critical. Particularly as you scale, it's important to know your numbers really, really well so that you can manage your finances, you can manage your inventory, which as a product company becomes increasingly critical and complex. And so those are really the two areas that we put a lot of emphasis. But as you also mentioned, Olivier, without the requisite capital, you're not going to be able to scale, nor with the requisite reaching out to the consumers and creating the demand, because demand creation is a critical component of being able to scale. You have to somehow move from a push market to a pull market over time. And that has been proven to be a very challenging thing for a lot of organizations, particularly in the health space. So those are the four elements: the human resources, the information technology, the communications or marketing, demand creation side, as well as the capital. In terms of the human resources, where we really start, and it's in our world at VisionSpring, it's really all about the people. We are working in places like India and Ghana and other fast-moving economies in the developing world. And we are competing often with the largest companies in the world for talent. And so how do you find the people who are able to bring that blend of business thinking and wanting to make a difference in the world? And what kind of incentives can you provide them? Because you can't compete on salary with the Apples and the Googles of the world for that talent. But you need that same level of talent to figure out the pressing problems that we're all trying to solve. And so how do you find those unique individuals who have the raw talent for working in any global company, but choose to work at a social enterprise? And so we spend a lot of time figuring out how to attract those people, and we try to have a culture that is innovative, forward-thinking, so that we stimulate those people to join us and to show them that by joining us, you're going to actually be able to make a critical difference in your country, to the development of the country, to the well-being of the people in that country. And we are pleasantly surprised that although they're difficult to find, those people are available. There are people in those societies who choose to work at an enterprise like a VisionSpring, even though they have the chops, if you will, to work at any global international company. In terms of the marketing, I just want to touch on that too, because that's an area where we have historically underinvested. And it's challenging as a small social enterprise to invest in demand creation, because demand creation really does require and often requires a change in culture and the way that people think about the product and service that you're providing. In our case, eyeglasses are often have negative connotations in certain cultures. There are certain cultures that believe that eyeglasses are just meant for rich people, or eyeglasses are going to make your eyes worse. Other kinds of misbeliefs about our product. And so we spend a lot of time at the community level working with thought leaders in that community, and we try to get our product onto their face as soon as possible. So we try to ensure that the community leaders are behind the product and are wearing the product and are showing the way forward for the people in their community. So thought leaders are really critical for demand creation, because you're not going to be able to have a Coca-Cola type of demand creation advertising campaign. It really has to come from the community, for the community, and try to find those people within those communities who people listen to and have the kind of resonance that we're looking for. I could go on, but I want to make sure that Simon has his fair turn as well.
I think you're on mute, Olivier.
Sorry, same question to you, Simon, but maybe with a particular focus on the question of the local context. Because in energy, clearly the government regulations and policies can affect the development of the market, which is something Jordan has not touched upon, but might be more relevant for energy. So what have been for you the key factors to succeed in scaling up and replicating?
Yeah, so thank you for that. So I mean, I would share very many of the comments that Jordan made. In the energy space, it's slightly different in that customers are already paying for something that's inferior. So actually the demand generation is normally the biggest problem. So our customers are generally in rural communities, and you have to build essentially from scratch a grassroots distribution network to those customers. So that requires a mix of talent, of processes, data monitoring, and just a whole lot of hard work to go and roll that out. To answer your question about regulation, we actually fall outside of most regulations. So we don't touch the grid, so we don't come under electricity regulation. We don't have a mobile phone in the unit, so we're not in telecoms regulation. So actually pretty much we go direct to consumer and kind of avoid quite a lot of regulation. And that actually brings a certain responsibility to almost self-regulate. So there are some voluntary industry bodies around, like the Global Off-Grid Lighting Association, Lighting Global, and so on, where we've defined standards, quality standards, and so on, that we then get tested against and adhere to ensure that the customer does get a good experience when that gets out into the market. I think in terms of where the challenges do arise, there are lots of challenges around import regulation and duties and things like that. So it's quite common for the duty on a product to change between when the product went on the ship and when the product came off the ship again, sort of 6 weeks later. So you have to deal with those sorts of issues. And then there are significant differerences country to country. So you take a model that works in Kenya, you can't just drop that into Nigeria or into Ghana or wherever else it may be. So significant differences around that. But really the key thing from us is we decided from the outset that we were going to be a distributed organization, and we were going to put senior management, very senior management, local talent into the market, be that in Nairobi, in Lagos, in wherever else it may be, and not have a sort of hub and spoke model where you have HQ that tells everybody what to do, but actually have a much more distributed organization where there is real expertise in the market, and in a sense the market is driving the center rather than the center driving outwards into the organization.
This, if I understand, implies that the local context can be sufficiently different that different marketing strategies would be necessary in different markets. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in simplistic terms, East Africa is commercial and West Africa is government, for instance, in terms of energy activities. And then, there's country by country variations, there's regional variations within countries, and so it goes down. So absolutely, you need to be able to adjust, very dynamically, depending in different regions, different countries, and so on.
This same question to you, Jordan. you have expanded or tried to expand in many different countries. Are there some parts of the world which you haven't been able to crack, and why?
So we have worked in a lot of different countries, and we've had mixed results. In countries that have open markets, populations that are poor but have the capacity to pay, where literacy is a little bit higher, where the need for close vision is essential, where people are working with their eyes and hands more, we tend to do better. In places where there is very little cash economy, where the regulatory environment is particularly challenging, we've done worse. So a country, for instance, like Haiti, we were not successful because the local ophthalmologic society felt threatened by us coming in and showing people that you can prescribe or dispense eyeglasses without a doctor's prescription. The regulatory environment can be quite stifling in a number of parts of the world. It's quite interesting to observe that in a country like the United States, where there's one eye doctor for every 10,000 people, one can buy a pair of reading glasses as a consumer product over the counter. But in some countries where there are populations of, or ratios rather, of one eye doctor per million people, those products, ready-made reading glasses, are regulated and cannot be prescribed, cannot be sold as a consumer product, that have to be prescribed by an eye doctor. So that is sort of a world upside down. And so part of the work that we're starting to do is to figure out how we can change those regulatory realities, particularly in countries where it just makes no sense. And so we have had a hard time working in those environments where the ophthalmologic and optometric societies are particularly in control of the entire supply chain for eyeglasses.
Thank you, Jordan. One of the questions asked by our friends, to what extent do you need to build your own distribution networks, such as like both of you seem to have done, or in what extent can you partner or work with existing distribution networks, with existing businesses? And a similar question is about partnering up with the government or donor organizations to subsidize access to more costly to reach customers, or customers who have less ability to pay, which is in order to both reach these customers, but also allow you to more quickly achieve the volumes and critical scale you need. So, Simon, would you care to start answering this?
Yeah.
Simon, unmute, please.
We use local.
Unmute.
Yeah, you can hear now? Yeah. So we use local resources wherever we can. The challenge is that there isn't any local resource that you need. So there is a retail capability locally in country there to go and answer your questions and fix your product and all of those sorts of things. Simply doesn't exist. So we have to build that wherever we can. We build it off existing resources and existing capabilities. They're already there. On the question of subsidies, that's a tricky one. Generally, we don't like subsidies because subsidies distort the market. And so the problem is, if you subsidize a company to go and produce or deliver a product, say at half price, essentially it means that there is no longer a commercial market for that product in that country, because nobody else is able to come in commercially to compete. So we think that subsidies are okay if they are just to help with the startup costs, and if they are applied evenly to all the providers so that you still maintain a commercial market. But as a general rule, we would prefer that there were no subsidies and the market was able to operate in a normal market environment.
Okay, so thanks for that. So Jordan, about the question about partnering with existing distribution channels such as rural pharmacies, and then the question about the subsidies.
Yes, thank you. Both really important questions, ones that we've grappled with for many years and continue to grapple with. In terms of the distribution question, it really comes down to, do you build your own, or do you, if you will, buy someone else's by partnering? In terms of what we've decided to do is a little bit of both. About 3/4 of our sales are through partnerships, and our distribution is taking advantage of our partners' tentacles into the marketplace. About 1/4 of our sales comes from distribution networks that we own almost the whole vertical channel. So we have some retail stores, we have some of our own vision entrepreneurs, and we are the ones sourcing the glasses, doing the marketing, putting the glasses on people's faces, doing the exams, doing everything. But it's about a 1-to-3 ratio in terms of the units that are getting out there. What we look at is what our costs are in order to fulfill or to place a pair of glasses on someone's face. And what we're generally finding is that the unit cost is lower when we buy the distribution or when we partner with another organization. So for instance, one of our largest partners, or in fact our largest partner, is an organization that many of your listeners have probably heard of, called BRAC in Bangladesh. And when we learned about them, we were very enticed by the fact that they had 100,000 community health workers who were in almost every village in Bangladesh selling useful health products. And they had never tried eyeglasses as one of those products. And so we approached them and we tested it with 50 women. It worked very well. And so we then tested with 500 women, still worked well, went up to 5,000 women. And now we're at about 25,000 women trained and distributing our glasses into the marketplace in Bangladesh. And we were just there a few months ago celebrating our 1,000th customer served through that channel. Now, it would have taken VisionSpring millions of dollars and probably decades to build a distribution network like that. And so it was a fast track, if you will, to get our products out in a very cost-effective manner. So that's the distribution side. In terms of the subsidy side, also a really challenging question. And I don't think there's any right or wrong answer there. But I think it does depend largely on how your organization is structured. In Simon's case, they've chosen to be a for-profit social enterprise. In VisionSpring's case, we've chosen to be a non-profit social enterprise. So we have, if you will, a little more wiggle room because we're constantly measuring our profit versus our target customer. And are we reaching down low enough? If we are finding ourselves profitable and sustainable economically, we start to ask ourselves, are we pushing ourselves to reach down market far enough? Are we starting to encroach on markets and customers that could be better served by for-profit players? And then when we go down lower in the economic strata, we find it increasingly challenging to become sustainable or to be cost neutral, which is what we hope to achieve. And so then we say to ourselves, are we reaching down too low? And is this really the role of a charity versus a social enterprise? So we're constantly trying to tighter where it is in the market that we belong. And where we've come to over the years is we believe that we should be working in markets that are immature and aren't viable for the private sector yet, but we are kind of the leading edge of providing this product and service to people who are just out of the reach of being able to afford fully loaded costs of services and goods. And we are, if you will, priming that market for an eventual private sector player coming, and figuring out markets and methodologies to get us to a place where the private sector over time can come in and play the role. So we sort of are like market instigators. We're not so far down that people have no capacity to pay. We don't want to be so far up that we can be profitable, because then we're not playing our role. So as a social enterprise, we're just at that leading edge. If the market is a wave, we're just a little bit ahead of the wave, where the market's not quite viable, but will be in the next 5 to 10 years.
Now, you are basically giving a great service to the fully commercial players who will follow your steps. Do you get paid for that?
It's a great question, and we believe what you just said, Olivier. We believe we are providing an excellent service, and we are in a way the R&D lab for the private sector players who are going to want to continue to push further down to the base of the pyramid consumer as the emerging markets become increasingly important in their business in order to sustain double-digit growth, which was what they want as for-profit companies. So we are partnering with organizations, companies like Essilor, which is the largest lens manufacturer in the world. At this point, we are not, quote unquote, paid for those services, but we are in conversations with trying to figure out, how do we coordinate better? How do we make sure that our value proposition is understood? Are there opportunities for them to fund VisionSpring to do our good work, to create the markets, to serve people who are underserved, with a investment or donation that I would say is enlightened self-interest.
I'll turn to Simon in a second, but based on what you said, it sounds like you don't want VisionSpring to exist in 50 years.
Well, we would want VisionSpring to exist, but what we want to constantly do, and it is a pretty, in a way, a bum deal, because right when we are ready to bear the fruits of our labor, we're handing the fruits off to the private sector, and we're going further down market. So we're constantly putting ourselves in a position to put ourselves out of business, and we're seeding all these seeds, but when the harvest comes, the value inures to the private sector versus VisionSpring. So there's some really interesting and robust discourse that we're having at the board level, saying is that the right way to go? Should we start to think a little bit more competitively, and as VisionSpring as trying to be the one who benefits from the fruits of our labor and the harvest, or do we just continue to be the charitable social enterprise that continues to not need the glory, not need the profitability, but just keeps doing the good work and broadening the reach and getting more and more people to see who wouldn't otherwise, which is really our mission.
Now, Simon, there's something that my intuition tells me that you intend to be there at harvest time, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes. We're a commercial business and we've got commercial investors. So, we expect to be there at harvest time. It is an interesting question when transition occurs. There is a time in the evolution of the market where the not-for-profit is the most effective way of getting to the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
There is a time when the market gets to a certain level of maturity that actually the commercial providers, even though they're making profit, are going to have more reach and more impact on the market. So, if you think about mobile phones, no way could an NGO replicate what the mobile phone industry is doing around the world today. But in the very early days, then there was a role to play. So there's exactly when that crossover occurs, that's not entirely clear.
Yeah. Now, Simon, what are you just? I mean, it would already be a huge achievement. But typically, the difference between a social entrepreneur and an entrepreneur is the fact that the social entrepreneur, his dream is to achieve such an impact at scale that he gets out of business because the problem is eventually solved.
Mm-hmm.
When an entrepreneur will focus on growing its organization. Now, this is not only a theoretical question, very practically, it has implications on how willing are you to share your innovations with your competitors. We heard that you collaborate with your competitors in setting standards, in lobbying for tax or import tariffs, but but you are competing with each other. How open are you to open source? How much do you have the intent of transforming the systems where you operate?
Yeah, so really interesting question. So we're entrepreneurs first, and we have a social mission second. I think, again, if I take the example of the mobile phone industry, the mobile phone players serve to do one thing incredibly well, and the rest of the market has gone and figured out how to use those mobile phones in ways that were never dreamt of by the originators of those products. And we seek to do the same thing. So we seek to provide essentially self-powered consumer electronics to our customers, and to have this ecosystem grow around the sort of things that we do, to have impact. And so, it has impact on women's independence, it's had impact on children's ability to learn, e-health, e-learning, all sorts of things that we couldn't possibly touch. And we don't try to, we just do the core of what we do. At the same time, we do have intellectual property, which is about our ways of doing things, but we do collaborate with our competitors because we're all building a market right now. This is a pre-competitive market, and so we do support each other in the way that goes. But also, we're looking to step up the chain. So our first product had 2 small solar lights and a USB port to charge your mobile phone, and that was it. Today we're selling a product with a TV with 50 channels of satellite on it, lights, mobile phone charging, smartphone, so on. And so really, our customers are going through a journey as well. They're moving from a kind of a subsistence existence through to being middle-class consumers. And there's a self-fulfilling prophecy that the more technology our customers get, the more opportunity they get to be able to earn, to increase their standard of living, to then be able to afford more technology. And so there's a very good definition of the poverty trap, which is where you're spending so much today on today's things that you can't afford to invest to buy the things that will enable you to do better in the future. Well, to a sense, we're trying to unwind that, where people get a bit of technology which enables them to have more money, enables them to have more technology, enables them to have more money. And so people grow out of the poverty trap much faster than you would imagine. So if I take, for example, solar-powered irrigation, we're working on that, and it is possible to double somebody's income in one season with solar-powered irrigation. So there are some really substantial gains that you can make by applying technology into places that haven't had it before.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Jordan, because we are kind of reaching the end of our conversation, I would like to ask both of you to reflect and basically to look back at what you have done over the last almost decade or over a decade. And what are the things you would have done differently if you were to do it again? Jordan, would you care to start?
Yes. We've been at this for now 15 years, and we made a lot of good decisions, and I think we made plenty of mistakes. And one thing that I would have done again, before I get to what I wouldn't have done again, is as we learned and as we made our mistakes, we were very transparent about them to ourselves first and foremost, and to our donors in the donor community and the broader social enterprise community. And VisionSpring was, I think, always looked at as an organization that was a straight shooter. When things were working, we told people why they worked and how they worked. And when they weren't working, we were equally as transparent to share lessons that we learned. In terms of what I would have done again, and this is always a tricky thing for any entrepreneur, is to know when to cut bait on a failed business model. As Simon was saying before, it's really critical to have a clear radar on whether this model is working or not. And if it isn't working, there's a right time to pull the plug and a wrong time. And as a young social enterprise, often because that's all you have and that's what your reputation is built on, it's awfully hard to stop a business model that's not working because you've been talking about it, you've been getting donors to be excited about it, and suddenly it's not working. And so how do you do that? So if I were to do it again, I would probably be even harder on ourselves and more realist in terms of, is this really working? And I would try to make that decision as fast as possible. We've all heard the saying, hire slow, fire fast. It's the same with, I think, business models. You want to create them slowly and surely, but if they're not working, don't keep throwing good money after bad money. Having said that, it's not an easy thing because there's always seems like there's hope. If you just tweak that, or if you just tweak this, things will work out. But be real cautious about sticking with one model for too long if it's not showing hope and if it's not getting uptake in the marketplace.
Yeah, it's probably easier to do so when you have other business models that are working. When it is the first one, it is probably a bit more difficult.
True.
So Simon, again, same question. If you had to do it again, you do the same, what would you do differently, if anything?
Yeah, I think, so yeah, we've certainly made our fair share of mistakes. I think it took us longer than it should have to become a sort of a global organization. So we started off where we were too headquarters centric. And it took us a while we always had people working in the market, but it took us a while to get really senior people working in the market. So I think that's probably the one thing that we'd have done. Other than that, there are some challenges. So certainly in the early days, I think there was a hype in the industry. And to some extent, you had to follow that hype curve because otherwise, frankly, you weren't going to get any share of attention. And so even though the industry was being driven more rapidly than perhaps it could sustain at that time, you had the challenge between growing slowly and being sustainable and growing very fast and being noticed, and trying to keep shareholders and everybody else on board in that environment was a challenge. But I mean, the sort of Warren Buffett approach of sort of ignoring .com and then looking very good after the event is great if you're Warren Buffett, but if you don't have all that money in the first place, it's a more challenging one to do. So, but yeah, I think that was really the main thing, was to get local fast and put real expertise there, not just sort of foot soldiers, but actually really senior local talent.
This is something I have observed many times, that there is the illusion of that you could control things from a center, and that if you were to put two senior people in country, then they would build their own castle and their own fortress, and that would be the end of the organization, when actually it's necessary. But then the problem becomes, how do you still manage to share best practices and get these guys to learn from each other? In your particular case, the technology is the same, right?
Yes.
So the systems are the same by definition. So you still have a lot of control over them, because they cannot do without you. Is that right?
Well, I mean, it's partly that, but also the people in country, everybody around the world is contributing to exactly the same thing. So we're all developing the same systems, the same processes, the same products, same customer requirements. And to give you an example, our team in Africa has share options in exactly the same way as our team based in the UK. So we don't make a distinction between people who are located at headquarters or elsewhere. And so everybody's driving to the same common processes, common products, and common customer experience.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And Jordan, how do you achieve this notion of a global team in your own dispersed organization?
It's also critical. I think I would reflect what Simon says, and it's a really valid point, and I would say it's something that a lot of enterprises make that mistake, is they don't get people with real hardcore business skills close to the customer fast enough. And also as a result, often we don't understand our customers well enough, fast enough. And so, at VisionSpring, what we do is we have over 120 people working for our organization, and only 8 of them are in our New York office. So we've skewed significantly for many years now our headcount and our investment in people closer to the action where our customers are. And New York really just acts as a finance hub and a fundraising hub and technical assistance hub, if you will. But really, most of the talent is close to the market.
That's very clear that this is the way. Successful organizations tend to go. The technology part of what is done is actually a small part compared to all the downstream activities of marketing. We can mention after-sales service, but it is obviously a key element in ensuring customer satisfaction. And this is by definition an extremely local activity. Gentlemen, I would like to stop here because we are reaching the end of our conversation. We have done our best to try to answer most of the questions that were raised. I'm sure our audience must remain frustrated that some of the questions were not answered. I'm speaking for myself, but I would be happy if any of you listening to this call have some specific questions you want to ask. My email is on the the web, and I'll do my best to try to answer this. Maybe Simon, would you care to say a few words of conclusions? And I'll ask the same thing to Jordan.
Yeah, so well, I mean, great discussion. I think a lot of the really important points have been highlighted. Yeah, bottom line is that there's no silver bullet. If it was easy, people wouldn't pay us. So you know, there's a lot of hard work that has to be done. But I think you know, some of the key learnings that we've seen have definitely come out, which is, you know, you can't take an MBA view of this. This is not something that's done in PowerPoint. This is done on the ground with constant innovation in every single aspect of the business. And by doing that, you iterate towards something that really has an impact.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jordan.
And, you know, Simon speaks well about how hard it is to do the work that we're doing and all of you are doing. And just to say that for those who are earlier on in the curve, if you're thinking about starting something or just starting something, be sure that it's something that really reaches your heart and touches your heart, because that is the engine that's going to sustain your ability to maintain your energy and the hard work that's going to be required to get your enterprise off the ground. So try to make sure that the work that you're doing is really part and parcel of who you are and what kind of energy you want to put out in the world.
Yeah, this is definitely not a summer project. So again, thanks a lot to all of you to have attended this conversation. Thanks to Tom for setting this up, and lots of thanks to Simon and Jordan. A pleasure talking to you, and I'm sure our paths will cross shortly. Thanks, and have a great day. Bye.